Welcome, everybody, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day today. I know as the holiday seasons approach, things get quite busy. So thanks for joining us. This is the first session of our Future of Healthcare Community of Learning series. Over the coming months, we're going to explore how urban Indian organizations are shaping what the future of care can look like. It can be culturally grounded, community-driven, innovative, and sustainable. Today, we're going to lay the foundation of that journey. When we talk about the future of healthcare, ideas and innovation come quickly, but the programs that truly make an impact are the ones built on clarity and shared direction. That's why we're starting this series with the tools that help turn inspiration into real-world action. We'll look at SMART objectives and logic models today. Think of today as building the roadmap that all future innovations in this series can stand on. So just an introduction of the team. My name is Liz Best. I am the Manager of Technical Assistance here at NCUIH. And joining me from my team are Amy Lord. She's helping out running the slides and some other platforms we'll be using. And then my colleague, Alyssa Smith-Longy, is kindly monitoring the chat box. We are honored to have you all here today. And we would love for you to drop your name, your organization, tribal affiliation, and title into the chat box if you so choose to. Next slide, please. Just a disclaimer, this event today is made possible by the Indian Health Service Cooperative Agreement Funds. However, it is solely the responsibility of the National Council of Urban Indian Health and does not necessarily represent the views of Indian Health Services or the Department of Health and Human Services. Next slide, please. And for those of you who are new here and may be unfamiliar to who NCUIH is, here's a little background. NCUIH is a national representative advocating for the 41 urban Indian organizations contracting with the Indian Health Service under the Indian Health Care Improvement Act. NCUIH strives to improve the health of over 70% of the American Indian Alaska Native population that lives in urban areas, supported by quality healthcare centers. Next slide, please. Super, so now that we are oriented, let's talk about what I hope that you'll take away from today. Today, we're grounding everything in one simple idea. Innovation is powerful, but innovation with structure can be transformational. So here's what we'll talk about during our time together during this training. First, we're going to learn how to turn innovative ideas into actionable strategies using core public health tools. Second, we'll break down SMART goals, not as a checkbox exercise, but as a real way to sharpen and strengthen your ideas. And finally, we're going to explore logic models and how they can help you design programs that truly meet the needs of your communities. And get ready to roll up your sleeves because we have an activity where we will be building a logic model together. My hope is that by the end of today's webinar, you will feel more confident putting structure around bold ideas, not to limit creativity, but to elevate it. Next slide, please. Before we go any further, I want to ground us in one idea that frames today's entire session. This quote captures the balance that we're aiming for in project design and management. Vision without action is merely a dream. Action without vision just passes the time, and vision with action can change the world. So in our work in program implementation in healthcare, we see all three. Sometimes we have the vision, but no clear plan. Other times we're busy, but not moving toward impact. And the goal today is to bring the two together, structure that supports innovation. Keeping that in mind, let's look at what happens when we don't have a roadmap. Next slide, please. Most of us have lived this slide. I know I have. You start a project with tons of energy, and at first things to be moving great until suddenly they aren't. Maybe timelines get fuzzy, partners get confused about their roles, or the goal starts expanding without a clear shape. When we don't use a roadmap, even the best ideas can lose momentum. And in the fast-moving world of community health, we don't always have time to waste or resources. This slide is here to remind us that innovation without direction is exciting, but it's short-lived. Next slide, please. Innovation and structure aren't opposites, and they can be seen as partners, which I hope this slide shows. Innovation brings spark, the passion, the vision, whereas structure brings the clarity, the plan, and the path to implementation. When we combine these, we get programs that not only dream big, but actually work. Programs your staff can run, your leadership can support, and your community can benefit from. That's exactly what SMART goals and logic models help us to do. Before we go deeper, let's check in on where everyone is starting from with a quick poll. Okay, you can scroll down and we'll go through questions one at a time. So the first question, if logic models were a type of weather, which would they be for you today? Clear skies and sunshine, partly cloudy, light rain, or full-on storm? Okay, well, we have some folks that find them still a little bit tricky. So I think today's webinar will be great for you because we're going to have an activity where we work on them. Those that feel confident, hopefully you can maybe share in our Q&A some tips and tricks that are great, that work for you. And luckily, nobody's in a full-on storm, so that's great. We all have a little bit of experience. Okay, let's scroll down to question 2. Let's see. What's your program planning style before a logic model? Architect, I map everything out. Detective, I gather clues as I go. Artist, I dream big first and sort later. And then improviser, I just start and see what happens. This is really interesting. I think that we're kind of almost spread evenly across the 4. So hopefully from today's webinar, we'll become a little bit more architect, but I do think that there's a role for each of these different, roles in here. Great. Number 3, how do you most often use a logic model in your work? For planning new programs, about half of us use logic models for that. For reporting or grant applications, yep, they can be super useful, especially if we don't wait until the end to try to capture outcomes. And for evaluation, very helpful. And then one person isn't currently using one. So hopefully we can get you feeling confident to use one. And then our last question, where do you feel most confident when creating a logic model? Identifying outcomes, about 33% of us, listing activities, defining outputs. Yep, outputs can be a little confusing. And then honestly, I'm not sure where to begin. Well, great. Thank you, everybody, for taking that poll. All right. And Amy will close it out and we'll jump into our next slide. Great. So we'll start with some SMART objectives. You guys likely, if you have a public health background, have heard of this term, SMART objectives. So SMART objectives are a foundational tool. They can take your big, exciting idea and break it down into clear, measurable steps. They can help answer the question, how will we know if this program is working? A SMART objective is specific, saying what exactly will be done. They're measurable. How will we track success? So how will your team and other stakeholders know that it's successful? They're achievable. Is your idea realistic with the available resources you have? Relevant, does the goal clearly connect to your organization's missions and your community's needs? And then timely, what is the set deadline for the work to be done? This framework of using SMART objectives helps us move from we want to do something great to here's exactly how we'll do it and how we will know that we've done it well. Next slide, please. So let's look at a hypothetical idea. And for the webinar today, we'll be using this example of creating a traditional foods program for your community or for your organization. On the surface, it sounds meaningful. We know it's rooted in culture, community, wellness, but as written here, it's not a SMART objective. We don't know what kind of traditional foods program we're talking about. Is it a class? Is it a food box program? Is it a garden? We can't measure success because there's no target. And we don't know if it's achievable because we haven't identified partners, staff, or resources. We don't know how it connects to our organizational mission. And on this slide, we have no timeline, so the work could drift indefinitely. So in this form, the idea has heart, but no roadmap. It gives us inspiration, but it does not give us any direction. Next slide, please. So making it SMART. Here's the same idea transformed into a SMART objective. So you can see here, by March of 2026, we're going to launch a traditional food program at the community center that offers traditional food meals and 3 cooking classes to at least 100 community members each month using existing volunteers and a new wellness grant. So you can see here how we get really specific. We have specific workshops, not a broad, undefined program. We have a measurable target, 3 workshops. If you have more than 3, that's great. We want to reach at least 100 participants, and it's achievable because we can plan staff, space, and materials around a concrete scope. It's relevant, it clearly supports community wellness and cultural connection, and it's time bound. It has a March deadline. Excuse me, next slide, please. And this is where logic models come in. They help connect the dots between your SMART goals and your program's impact. Logic models are one of the most effective tools that we use in public health. They give us the whole picture on one page. A logic model shows what we're putting into a program, what we're going to do, what we expect to produce, and the outcomes we hope to see. They turn bold ideas into clear pathways, the kind you can share with your partners, your funders, and teams to keep everyone aligned. Next slide, please. As we move into this section on logic models, there are 2 things I want to share up front. As I said before, and for those just joining, we're not just going to talk about logic models today. We're going to build one together in a few minutes. So you can see how the pieces come alive in real time. And second, when I was taught about logic models and the way that I like to teach them is to start at the end and work backwards. Why? Because most of us begin with the idea or the activity, but the real anchor is the change that we're trying to create. When we start with the outcome, the long-term impact we want for our communities, the rest of the model becomes clearer and more purposeful. So when we look at why logic models are important, it's because they do exactly that. They help us visualize the whole pathway from the big change we hope to see all the way back to the resources and activities needed to get there. They give our program structure, alignment, and clarity, and they keep our staff focused, our partners informed, and our evaluation grounded in actual goals rather than assumptions. And when we're trying to innovate, a logic model becomes the map that keeps creativity moving in a clear direction. Additionally, a logic model is a working document too. It's something that is expected to be revisited from time to time. Next slide, please. This slide really answers the questions, why bother with a logic model? And the reason is simple. A logic model isn't something you create once and forget. It's something you continue to apply throughout the entire life of the program. A good logic model becomes your anchor. You come back to it during planning, when you're deciding what's realistic. You come back to it during implementation to make sure your activities still align with the outcomes that you want. And you come back to it during an evaluation to check whether you achieved what you set out to do and why or why not. They're meant to be flexible. And as programs evolve, the logic model evolves with them. It helps you communicate your purpose and expected results, articulate the actions that lead to impact, and keep everyone aligned. It also strengthens your team's planning and evaluation skills, supports stakeholder buy-in, and allows you to draw lessons learned from other projects. And because it makes assumptions visible, it helps you spot challenges early on and adjust the work before small issues become big ones. So the logic model, it really isn't just a planning tool. It's a living guide that applying, refining, and using to stay focused on the impact you're trying to create. And with that, let's walk through the steps of how to build one, and then we'll build an example together. Next slide, please. So here you'll see the steps, and they're laid out in order, and it's very normal to move back and forth between them as your thinking becomes clear. So although we're going to go through this in a linear way, as I explained the steps to you, a logic model isn't meant to be used in a linear manner. So first, we start with our goal. So you can have a brainstorming session, so what is the goal? The big picture of what you're trying to achieve. This is the destination that you're working toward. Next are your inputs, and these are the resources that you have or you might need. So this can be staff, funding, cultural knowledge or subject matter knowledge, any partnerships, space, materials. So these are all of the things that are going to help you to reach your goal. From then, we're going to link those inputs to our activities. When identifying these activities, these are the things that you're going to do with the inputs or the resources. So are they workshops, classes, outreach, food distribution, events, trainings? They can be a number of different things. And finally, we outline the outputs, and these are the tangible products of these activities. How many workshops, how many people served, how many materials created, how many meals prepared. And this is really good for when you get to your evaluation later on. You can easily go back and look, did you meet these outputs? So these first 4 steps give us a strong foundation. They show the connection between what we bring to the table, what we do, and what we produce. And once these pieces are in place, we can focus on the most meaningful part of the changes we expect to see because of that work. So let's move into the next layer and talk about the outcomes: short-term, intermediate, and long-term impacts that guide the entire model. Next slide, please. Now that we're at the outcomes, I want to pause here because this is often the part that feels sometimes most confusing. I know sometimes I actually have to go back and remind myself, okay, so what is the long-term outcome again, intermediate and short-term. So as someone who's built many logic models, sometimes I have to go back for a little refresher. So if you've ever stared at an outcome box and thought, what exactly goes here? You're not alone. Outcomes are harder because we're no longer talking about what we do. We're talking about what will change because of what we do. And often we can dream of that, but we're not exactly sure. Predicting change can feel uncertain. And that's why we're going to break it down into 3 different levels. The short term, so this can be seen as knowledge or awareness gained. Intermediate, behaviors or practices that we hope to see begin to shift. And then lastly, long term. So these are the broader health or community impacts that we hope to see. And this is exactly why I like to start from the end and work backward. When you begin with a long-term change, the real impact you want for your community, the rest of the model becomes clearer. It gives you direction, a purpose, and helps tie activities back to something meaningful. So if outcomes feel a bit fuzzy, that's normal. Starting with the end helps bring everything into focus. Now let's take the structure and apply it to our example program so you can see how the pieces fit together. Next slide, please. And this is just a slide that you can use as a template. And we're going to go to the next slide where we will have an opportunity to enter a Padlet. So you can scan the QR code or Alyssa's going to drop the Padlet link into the chat box. And we're going to go back to our hypothetical program. So we're going to build a logic model on a program called Nourishing Our Traditions, a community-based traditional foods program. And as I said, I like to start at the end and use the Padlet. All you need to do is click that little plus sign, and then you will be able to jump in and type what an outcome can be. And if you have thought about starting a traditional foods program within your organization, feel free to use your organization as an example. And if not, you can just play around with a hypothetical as a learning exercise. So if we were going to look at what long-term outcomes might be for this program, the question would be, in an ideal world, what change do you want to see in your community as a result of a traditional foods program? Great, I see some putting some into short-term outcomes. Great, so decrease in a rate of diabetes, right? And we can see that as a long-term outcome because it might take a few years to be able to really measure, is there, you know, a change at a more population level. Great. So long-term outcomes, they can be health related, they can be wellness related. It could also be community connection, but those are all really great ones. What about intermediate outcomes? Intermediate outcomes, right? We said those can be great. I like that one, courteous. Decreased rate of food insecurity. So intermediate outcomes, those can be behaviors or practices to change, right? So what could examples of that be? Right? Increase in families cooking at home, increased understanding of foods that contribute to wellness. Yep, community members consistently coming together monthly for traditional food workshops, and improved agricultural systems. Great. And then greater availability of healthy foods. And you can make all of these outcomes SMART as well, right? So that's really helpful to measure, like if you're having an impact, right? So what decrease of, food insecurity might you like to see? What decrease in diabetes patients would you hope to see within your community? Greater availability of healthy foods, right? So how many new foods do you want to see people implementing into recipes or diets? Those are all really great. And then short term, right? So that's not more knowledge, right? Are people aware of nutritional education? Are they aware of different recipes for traditional foods? So those would be more short-term outcomes. Yep, participants having an increased understanding of nutrition. And you can do this with like pre and post tests. And again, making these SMART will help you to understand if you've really reached your goal. These are all great. Great, so now we've worked on the 3 outcomes, and you can see I always look at like short-term plus intermediate equals long-term. And when you're building them again, keep in mind, making them SMART. Okay, so then we will go to our next one, which is outputs. Let's see if anybody can remember what the outputs were. I'll give everybody a hint. So these were what we will deliver to impact the change that we hope to see. Okay, number of workshops, 3 per month. Great, and that's super, making it SMART. Monthly cooking classes. Number of community garden days, great, I like that one. Super. Nutrition weekly newsletter, right? That's a great thing. Great educational materials, right? So are those going to be put out there monthly? And those are all really great. And then the activities. So the activities should be linked to each of your outputs, right? So let's click the plus and let's see what some of the activities might be. Providing cooking classes. Right? And an activity could be developing the content for the community of learning, right? Great. So a lot of the activities would be creating the knowledge that you would hope to share in an output. And sometimes when you see a logic model, right, you'll see little arrows. A lot of people make them, even more detailed with, how the inputs link up to the activities and then to the outputs. Padlet does not have the little arrows, but it can be really, really helpful to really understand how the activities are matching your outputs, right? And it could be an activity is building weekly food kits, reaching out to partners, to secure, produce from maybe a store or a garden. So those are all great. And then what are the inputs? So remember, the inputs are resources. So think about your own organization. What are some of the resources that you have that could lend to this project? And some of the things that you might need, it could be funding, it could be staff, right? Nutritionists, community health workers, funding for cooking class supplies, partnerships with gardens, supplies. Great. And this is really a great visual to see what you do have and where you might need to gain some more resources. Well, super. So does everybody, I hope this has given everybody some working knowledge of creating a logic model, especially if it was your first time creating one. We built this one really quickly, so you can really sketch out an idea, and it's really helpful. Bring your full staff in to do it because different people have different ideas. It can be a really fantastic brainstorming activity. This Padlet that I used is actually a free application, and I find it really helpful if you are like in a virtual space that you can keep this as a working document and work on it together. So if you've never used a Padlet before, it is a tool that you can bring into your own work. Awesome. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so as we wrap up, here are the key points that I hope you to leave with today. Remember those early slides. Innovation needs direction. Big ideas become stronger when we give them structure. Number two, SMART goals guide the way. SMART goals turn ideas into clear steps your team can follow. Logic models, they're the tool that's going to help connect your vision to your impact by showing how your work leads to real change. Co-create for success. Co-creation builds stronger programs through shared understanding and buy-in. And then finally, remember programs evolve, especially if you're in a 3-year grant. And so we expect the logic model to adapt and change So your programs, as they evolve, your logic models should grow with it. My hope is that you walk away feeling more confident using these tools to bring clarity and alignment and intention to your work. Let's close with a few resources you can use moving forward. Next slide, please. So here are some resources, and we are going to share the slide as well, but CDC has some resources. The Train Learning Network, they have webinars where you can dive in a little bit deeper. And there are some other templates and handouts here as well. Next slide, please. And with that, we can stop for some questions, or if anybody wants to share a little bit about how they use logic models in their work, or maybe you feel more confident after this webinar, I hope, in building logic models, but I'm happy to take any questions, or feel free to share some of the work that you do currently using logic models. Okay, well, it's okay if you don't have any questions.
I actually had a question, Liz, if I could ask you. So I find myself sometimes struggling with the short-term, intermediate, and long-term outcomes. I know you kind of had said one tip you do is like short plus intermediate should equal the long-term outcomes, but I was wondering if you had any other kind of advice you could give. And then also I was wondering, does that also sometimes depend on your program, what might be a short-term or an intermediate outcome based on kind of like what you're doing?
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, when you have like the long-term outcome, sometimes you might not really be able to see that change, right? Especially if you're working on a grant that's 1 year, right? And your change hopes to be big, right? Especially if we're measuring a health change. And so the short term and the intermediate might be, I guess, a little bit more tangible. But I think about it like as I always look at it too, because I'm very interested in like behavior change and health behavior change, right? And so we always start with, what is the knowledge gained? And so that's how I like to think about short term, right? So for someone to kind of reach self-efficacy in terms of health behavior, they need to have the knowledge, and then to have the tools, and then we might see more of a, community or a health related change. But sometimes they do overlap where they get confusing, or sometimes you might see, you do a survey or an evaluation and you see that there's different change that has come from your program that you might not have anticipated. But that's a great question, Alyssa. Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to our next slide. So we really appreciate your time and effort to help us shape future events. Here is a QR code for our NCUIH survey. Feel free to take it. You can take it now. We do follow up after this webinar with all of this information, and so you can take the survey at a later date, but it does really help us to inform future programming. Next slide, please. Here is a great tool that actually my colleague Alyssa, you just heard from, she was the project lead on. We have an amazing RSV toolkit that is located on our website. And there is also the Native Health Protection Network, which is a newsletter that will share information about vaccines and respiratory health. And so feel free to sign up for the Native Health Protection Network, and there'll be some great webinars coming out after the new year as well. Next slide, please. One-on-one technical assistance. So if you get stuck on your logic model, you can reach out to us here at NCUIH. Here is a link. We do provide technical assistance on a number of different topics. So feel free to reach out if technical assistance is needed. Next slide, please. We do have some upcoming events. As I shared, this is the first session in our community of learning. Our next session will be January 29th. We're making these a little bit shorter, not the full hour, as we know everybody's quite busy. But we will be profiling the work of one of our UIOs and discussing smart health access, the rise of wellness vending machines. And one of our UIOs will be presenting. So I hope you can join us. And we will have a third session in February where we're still working on topics and content for that. We also have materials here for our conference, which is going to be held April 27th through 29th this year with Hill Day on the 30th. We do have an open call for proposals, which will close on January 15th. So please submit if you have a program or a project that you would like to discuss at our webinar, or our annual conference, excuse me. And Alyssa will drop information on that. And next slide, please. If you have not subscribed to our newsletter, we're dropping a link in as well. And we hope you do subscribe. And last slide, please. Sure. Well, again, I hope that this webinar was helpful. And it was wonderful to have so many of you join us today. And happy holiday season. And hope to see you all in a webinar in 2026.